Hey, what's up, sports bettors? My name is Matt Modi. I'm a content producer and betting analyst for OddsJam.com. And what I am going to be doing in this video, I'm going to teach you how you can make money on Underdog Fantasy. Underdog, as I'm sure you are aware, has just become incredibly popular as time has gone on. They have a bunch of great draft options, but they also have these over-under player props, which is what I'm going to be talking about specifically in this video. It's pretty simple. As you can see on the screenshot here, it's just giving you a player prop and it's letting you choose an over or an under. It's basically the same thing. You can treat it as a parlay. You have to have all of your over-under selections hit. If they do, you make your money. If they don't, you lose all of your risk, unfortunately. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about strategies on how you can make money, specifically playing these over-unders on Underdog Fantasy. But before I get into it, it's important to understand how Underdog Fantasy works. So I mentioned with the over-unders, you're choosing a player prop stat, you're choosing an over, you're choosing an under. That part's pretty easy. What gets a little more complicated is the implied odds and the payout of how these work. So you guys know that if you just use two of these plays together, you essentially double your money. So you bet 20 bucks, you win 60, or I guess I should say you win 40, you get back 60 because you get back your initial risk of 20, basically meaning you double your money on a two-pick selection. Funny enough, thanks to the genius of the OddsJam co-founder, we learned that the implied odds of a two-leg entry like that is minus 137 each way. Again, as you can see on the screenshot here, if you just parlay two entries for minus 137 odds, you essentially get to your plus 200 number. So that's incredibly important. Obviously, you need to understand how it works, and obviously you need to understand how the payouts work as well. So what this means is that when you are looking for selections on what you should add to your underdog over-under selection, you need to look for plays where you can find a value with that minus 137 number in mind. Of course, when you are putting any sort of money on anything, you want to make sure you're getting a value, right? If you're buying a stock, you want to make sure that stock should actually be priced higher. It's the same thing with Underdog. It's the same thing with sports betting. If you are selecting a play and you're putting two together at plus 200 odds, you want to make sure that the implied odds of those two plays should be lower than plus 200 to make sure you're getting a value out of it. So that is exactly what I am here to teach you in this video. How to find selections, profitable selections to put in an underdog entry, and more importantly, how to make money on Underdog Fantasy. So let's get into it. All right, and I figured the easiest way for me to show you how to find a profitable selection would be to actually show you. So what I have up here on my screen is all of the odds for a player prop. In this case, it is Joe Burrow, his passing yards. It's what every book is pricing his passing yards. Number one, I found this. You can line shop for completely free using OddsJam. Just go to oddsjam.com, go to NFL or sports NFL, and then you can click into a game and you can find all of these different markets. So if you specifically want to look for player props, you just do exactly that. You go to the drop down here, you look for player props. So as I mentioned, every single book, we see what they're pricing Joe Burrow's player prop yardage at. And as we can see, there is a pretty decent outlier when you look at Underdog Fantasy compared to all of the other books. So Underdog prices his total over under higher lower than 275 and a half. Every other book, literally every other book, has his passing total below this amount. We see a couple books have it at 274 and a half, a couple have it at 272 and a half. We see Prize Picks, a very, very similar company. Let me move my camera so you can actually see Prize Picks. As you can see, Prize Picks has it at 269 and a half. Similar company, obviously, daily fantasy sports, DFS, higher, lower, stuff like that. Has it at 269. Then we see FanDuel at 268 and a half. We see PointsBet at 265 and a half. We see FoxBet at 266 and a half. Long story short, literally every other book possible has this selection below the number that Underdog Fantasy is giving you. this is an example of a play that you would want to take advantage of. You want to look at the betting markets and you want to see where there are discrepancies. This one on the far right is just the Underdog Fantasy 5-pick selection, which has the implied odds of -122. Obviously, the payout is different for the more selections that you add. But line shopping, comparing Underdog to the rest of the sports betting world, even though Underdog isn't actually sports betting, you're playing on selections and stuff, it's still good to see where all the other books price it. All the other books are telling you, we think his passing yardage prop should be below this number, except for one. Now, obviously, these numbers aren't massively different when you compare to the high yardage total of 275.5, 274, 272, 269, 268, 266, 265, which is just ridiculous. It's not that big of a difference when you look at the holistic betting view and you just think about the difference of 275.5 passing yards. But when every other book is telling you his number should be priced lower than this amount, that is something for you to take advantage of. So this is one way in which you can make money on Underdog. You just find mispriced lines, in one specifically where Underdog is the mispriced play, and you take advantage of examples like that. And here's another example just to show you how powerful and how valuable it is to see where every other book is pricing a certain player and their player prop. In this case, we're looking at receiving yards for Jamar Chase. Same exact logic here. Underdog Fantasy has his receiving yards way significantly higher than every other book does at 76.5. Only one book has it at 75. Looks like 3 books have it at 74.5. A couple have it at 73, 72, 71. Every book is telling you, hey, we think Jamar Chase's receiving yardage total should be priced at a number that is below 76.5. And this is the number that that Underdog Fantasy is giving you. And what I did find funny was that Prize Picks has his at 71.5 as the lowest of all of the sports books. So basically, these two companies that have very similar models in terms of how they price stuff and generally what their payouts look like, they're both daily fantasy, have the widest gap in terms of what they think Jamar Chase's player prop receiving yards number should be higher or lower than. So another one that would be good to add is this under 76.5 in Jamar Chase, which makes sense because obviously if Joe Burrow is likely to go under, Jamar Chase is likely to go under as well. But that's more of a handicapping thing, and this is strictly math focused. All you want to do, use the sports books to take advantage of each other. Find sharp underdog picks to add to a selection. I just found 2 from looking at 2 separate player prop markets. Now, obviously, you need to make sure that those player props can be combined into the same entry. But I literally just found 2 from line shopping, and it took 2 seconds. Okay, and the last and also easiest way to find selections to add to an underdog selection, just to go to oddsjam.com and use the positive expected value page. It does all the work for you. It literally provides opportunities in which the best odds you can get, the implied odds, are on Underdog, which means that would be a great selection to add to whatever play you're making. So in this case, there are a couple plays up here. They're all on baseball, but luckily the logic is the exact same. Doesn't matter whether it's football, basketball, baseball. The strategies that I'm giving you in this video are not just for football. So the line shopping, that applies to baseball. That applies to basketball. Positive EV selections on Underdog, that applies to baseball. That applies to football. That applies to basketball. Basketball. So don't think that because the first 2 games, the examples I gave you were football, that everything has to be football. No, it's just we're in the middle of football season. If it were basketball season, things would be different. In this case, regardless, we're looking at positive expected value selections to add to Underdog. In this case, looks like the majority of them are for the 5-pick entry, but let's see what we have here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have more than 5. Basically, you could just scroll through the OddsJam positive EV page and place a profitable entry right now, literally without any thought. Just go add all 5 of these at the implied odds of -122 for each one, and you're good to go. You don't need to do any other thought or any line shopping or anything like that. And here's how it works. So the way the OddsJam positive expected value page works, so actually, let me back up. Sports betting in general. The sports books, regardless of the book, Caesars, DraftKings, FanDuel, whatever, they all make their money by charging a VIG, by charging juice to markets. So actually, if you look at the juice of an implied underdog selection, minus 137 each way, you see the VIG of like 15%. That's a lot. Standard sports betting is minus 110 each way, VIG of 4.76%. That basically means for every $100 wagered on a spread at minus 110 each way, the sports books makes $4.75. That's kind of how that works on average, obviously. So in order to get a true representation of how all these sports books think a market should be priced at, what you need to do is remove the VIG, find out the no VIG odds. That is something that OddsJam does for you. The way that OddsJam calculates it, which is really cool and very technical, I'll try to sound intelligent as I'm describing it. Basically, the OddsJam software, what they did was collect all of this data. You know, I'm talking sports, I'm talking different markets, I'm talking different sports books, odds, player props, game props, all that stuff. They took in all this data and then they back tested that to determine, okay, what sports books are the best at pricing odds? Which sports books do the best job? So when you look at plays that hit and all that stuff, which sports books generally are on the right side of things? OddsJam collected all that data, and then they took a weighted average of all of these sharp sports, all of these sharp books that do a good job at pricing these odds, and then moved the VIG with a weighted average of all of these books. And that is exactly what you see here. So I mentioned at the very beginning about the implied odds. This is where you can get the implied odds, the no VIG line of the OddsJam line. In this case, since we're doing this one is a 5-pick selection, any scenario in which the no VIG line of some sort of player prop is higher than minus 122, that is going to be a prize pick or underdog entry that you should add into your selection, an underdog entry that you should add into your selection. In this case, we're looking at player strikeouts in the Cubs versus Phillies game. Hayden Wesneski, the play is over, higher, 4.5 strikeouts. Again, implied odds of minus 122 on underdog. The no VIG line, according to OddsJam, has this at minus 131. So there's a pretty decent gap between the implied odds and the no VIG line and the implied odds of underdog. So if you want to find plays to add to underdog, just go to oddsjam.com, go to the positive EV page, and just scroll and just scan the page. That's literally all you need to do. The coolest thing about it is you can literally filter specifically for underdog. So I knew that this video I was talking about underdog. Guess what? I filtered out every single sports book except for Underdog Fantasy. And here we have it. A bunch of plays showed up. So in general, line shopping, more importantly, positive expected value. That is how you can make money using underdog. So hopefully that made sense. If you have any questions, please let me know. I would love to help you guys out on this. Comment on the video with any questions, feedback, all that stuff. But that's it. So I appreciate you guys watching and have a good one.